This is Stacy Clark, the first Black female superintendent of the Toronto Police. Passionate about her job, her community, and her culture. But why am I talking about it? Because obviously she didn't do something great. Otherwise, she wouldn't be here to be talked about in the first place. Welcome back. Like I said, her name is Stacy Clark, and she is guilty of cheating by sending exam questions to Black constables in advance to help them get promoted.
In emotional and raw testimony, a Toronto police superintendent facing discipline apologized for helping constables cheat on a promotional exam.
In her testimony, she talked about an environment where Black officers were disadvantaged and a new hiring process that could have been made hiring more fair was suddenly cancelled. Now, before we explore that side of things, I just want to go over where she's coming from. I understand the need and want and desire to have more of your people involved in law enforcement, especially in law enforcement, actually, where we have witnessed the birth of the BLM movement for a specific reason. But this is not the way in which to do what you do. You do not cheat your way to anything, especially in the name of Black people. The worst thing, and it sets the worst example for Black people on top of that everywhere, where which you could not make it without cheating. It sets that precedence that you could not have made it without cheating. Even if your intentions were good and pure, what would have happened is you're going to keep doing this until you hit your point, I guess, of successful constables, and I guess from that promotions, therefore you could hire other Black people through that means. But regardless, just a terrible, terrible way to go about it.
More than 2 decades after joining Toronto's police force, Stacy Clark received a call she'll never forget.
I just sort of gasped for air a little bit.
In that moment, she became the first Black woman in Toronto promoted to superintendent. 2 weeks later, she's still trying to process it.
Now, you've ruined your own reputation, and by doing so instilled a negative stereotype about all Black people, being that they're incapable, that they're cheaters, that they're untrustworthy, and I'm going to dive into the kind of her reasoning behind this, and though I do think her reasoning is understandable, it doesn't make it condonable. Everything you did takes everything you've done and essentially makes it irrelevant, because now people will only remember you as that person, and even the people who are trying to necessarily move past it and see what else you've done, anybody who doesn't like you, who's wants to basically use your reputation as an example to hurt your cause or whatever, they'll be like, hey, do you remember that time she was cheating and giving exam answers to future employees? Yeah, I remember that moment. I remember that.
As John Woodward reports, the hearing also delved into how unfair the hiring process was to Black candidates to begin with, and how a plan to fix it was canceled without warning.
The first part of Superintendent Stacy Clark's testimony was an apology for giving 6 constables questions in advance of a promotional exam. She told the hearing, "It was tremendously important for me to take responsibility for what I had done. I know it was not the right path."
I mean, here's the thing. You can't just say that after you've been caught. I mean, you can because you did, but it means very little because you would probably keep going. You'd probably keep doing it until you got caught or got very successful at what you were trying to do. Now, there are times where I think we Black people need to stop crying about race so much and do what needs to be done. Working hard, staying dedicated, keeping your head down. But that doesn't mean I also wouldn't want to see more Black people in political spaces, for example, more involved in politics. I would love to see that. Right? I think there is a better way to go about doing it, though, and you didn't do that way.
Solution that Clark supported and was adopted by Toronto's Police Service Board in 2021, a new procedure that involved providing the questions in advance to everyone.
It was based on feedback from 500 Toronto police officers.
The Toronto Police Service Board oversees the police, but the tribunal heard even though the board approved the plan, the police service didn't put it into practice. In a report, Professor Wendell Agite wrote, before its implementation, the TPS made an executive decision without warning to suspend the new process and revert to the original unfair practice that the members identified in the external review.
And so that's where it gets a little weird, because it wasn't going to do something that just affected Black people. It was going to be something to benefit everyone, which, like I said at the beginning, I think her intentions are coming from a very good place. Her, pretty decent. She seems like a decent person at the end of the day, but her execution after was absolutely abhorrent. But that's where she became frustrated, right? So according to her, because of this, because it didn't work out the way she wanted it to or, intended it to, she started to take matters into her own hands, breaking the law. And though this is not like a big law thing, but she's a cop, you know what I mean? Upholding the rules is kind of your whole shtick. She had this to say: "I don't know how to explain to you because you may not understand these types of feelings. I was invisible. I was not supposed to be advocating, not for black members. It was my tipping point. But now the outcome has become something more horrible. Now you can't really advocate for anybody because who's going to believe you when you do? But oh, she's probably helping them cheat somehow." You can never allow yourself to stoop to a lower level like that, especially when you're the first black female constable. It's like you're the example for everyone. You have a huge weight on your shoulders there. And it really isn't worth putting it out there in this way, setting such a abhorrent example. You are really better off turning to social media, you know what I mean? Continue to fight your fight as hard as it was, especially after they made the decision. The TPS decided not to continue doing something that everyone else had agreed was pretty good and pretty useful for everyone, turning to social media, forcing them to give a reason why, or backpedal and go back to the original plan. And at the end, I'm so torn between how big of a punishment she should get. I do believe her heart was in the right place. The execution was just wrong, but the punishment should be something. What should that punishment be? I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you guys out there know better than I do. I'm not on board with what everyone else is saying, which was throw her in jail. I think that's a bit excessive, but something. Like, comment, subscribe, and look out for more.